Prepper boys, do spade. We gotta survive, yeah, we gotta survive. To stay alive, yeah, to stay alive. You better be ready, or you better be steady. No, you don't be pathetic. It can happen. Prepper boys, you just gotta watch it all. It can happen. Prepper boys, when the backs against the wall. It can happen. Prepper boys, and you know when that's a fall. It can happen. Prepper boys, it can happen any minute.
All right, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Prepper Boys podcast. I am Ryan with
What's up?
With my host as always, my co-host as always, Jordan. You're supposed
Blank.
to. Well, they gotta know our first names. They gotta know what to call us.
Oh, okay. So I'm Jordan. I'm Jordan Blank.
And I'm Blank Ryan.
That's his last name.
That's my middle name.
That's his name.
That's my name. Jordan, how have you been since the last episode?
Since the last episode, that was 3 hours ago when we recorded that, I've been all right.
Me too. I had a birthday. I'm now older. You haven't
How
had
old
a
are
birthday.
you?
I'm 50. 50 years old.
Man, you sound really young. You sound like a young 50.
Oh, I've been taking care of my body. I've been taking care of my vocal cords. I still have a little girl's voice, which is perfect for a podcast. What else?
I mean, I guess you can
how
get the old pervs to listen.
Yeah, that's right. All you pervs, write into us at prepperboys@gmail.com. So Jordan, how have things been where you are?
It's been all right, except for living in the asshole of America, Florida. You have all sorts of protests going on with the march for taking away our rights.
Yeah, it's a march for rights. It's a march for lives.
Oh yeah.
So here's my really big annoyance with this though, is that I don't care. They can march. I'm sick of that Emma Gonzalez girl already. I'm
the David Hogg kid.
Yeah, and I'm pretty bummed that we're gonna, because they're like you can already see that they're like, it's not even about the thing anymore. It's these kids are like, they're just setting themselves up for like,
oh yeah,
the next 25 years of their lives. They're just gonna go around talking about how like, I was in a school shooting.
Well, that dude's dad was an FBI agent, and apparently they're really well off. I guarantee you his dad's looking at him thinking, you know what? This is going to be good for your future. You're going to run for Congress one day.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Like, they're going to definitely... It's just, that's what sucks about it, is it seems so clear that they're like... The issue has sort of now become secondary for that particular group of students. They're just like, oh, hey, if I do this enough, I can fucking segue this into, like, the rest of my life. But here's the other thing that I'm annoyed with. So
that Emma Gonzalez girl said that she wouldn't have even gone into the debate if it wasn't for CNN pushing her into it.
Right, yeah. And the whole thing is just, it was all really, that's fine, that's cool. Here's the other thing that I think is very annoying about it though is, so there was all these kids here, and I mean across the whole country, but there's all these kids who were like, when they did the walkout, for like the 17-minute walkout or whatever it was, and there were kids who were like upset that they were going to get in trouble for it. But like, part of what makes protesting a protest and like what makes that brave is that there's a consequence for what you're doing. If there's no consequence to
assuming that they're even...
What do you mean?
Yeah, but like, what about the schools that were punishing people for not walking out?
What do you mean? What school did that?
There were schools that were punishing kids. I think it was in Iowa or Ohio or something, one of those kind of northern Midwestern states. They were punishing kids. They were suspending them and giving them detention and whatnot for not walking out because they claimed that it was, quote, a safety concern that the students, couldn't stay in there. And so they were essentially forcing them to participate in this, voluntary action.
I mean, if that's the case, I mean, I don't have a huge issue with that. It's the same as saying, like, you didn't go to the fucking pep rally and now you're in trouble. Like, if that's it, but like, you know,
that's completely different.
It's not though, because it's the same thing as like saying like, Okay, so you're
It's
saying
not
that,
a school function.
but if it becomes a school function, then it is. I mean, that's like saying then, if I get
So
detention,
you're okay with the school?
yeah, I don't give a shit, because just go stand outside for 7 minutes and keep your mouth shut. Like, who gives a shit? It's the same thing as like, okay, so if I'm a student and I'm protesting the pep rally on the grounds that people get concussions from football, like I should just be allowed to, like, I don't have to go do this anymore. I don't have to participate
These
in
are
football.
completely different subjects,
But
and there's no correlation between those.
It is. That's a shitty argument to say.
There's not.
There is. If the school
No, you're making a shitty
no,
argument.
no. If the school says this is now a school function, it's the same thing, dude. Because I've been to schools when 9/11 happened.
It's not the fact
Hold
that
on.
they're going to say it's a school function. It's the type
Hold
of
on.
function that they would say would be that.
No, hold on. So after September 11th, when I was 12 or whatever, we all had to go outside and stand around the flagpole to, like, honor the towers and the victims, right? Like, at that point, it's just
So
like a school.
you were a part of the rise of neo-nationalism.
Yes.
You are the person that Donald Trump was wanting to vote for him. Good job.
I want to make America great again. But my whole thing is, this is my issue, okay? Protesting something, part of what makes protesting something like a courageous thing. I saw this a lot with people, like local politicians here, who were like, oh, like, it's awful that these kids are getting
Tom Cotton.
No, not Tom Cotton, because Tom Cotton was, like, super against it. These were, like, liberal candidates who were like, it's shitty that these kids are being punished for protesting. When we marched in the 70s, like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, right, but when you marched in the 70s against Vietnam or whatever, like, you were punished for that in one way or another. That's what I think is annoying to me about it. Like, yeah.
Well, I also want to point out the fact that you work for a news company and you work in the news and you're hearing about all that stuff. But the thing is about the info about the kids, actually being punished, or what, the ones that are being brought out, the ones that are doing it and everything,
Right.
that are getting in trouble for doing it. You don't hear about that. Like, that's not really making the news anywhere about the kids that are getting in trouble for doing it. You really only hear about the fact that, these teachers and these schools are encouraging it.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think you're not seeing that on national media, and that's just because, like, that's a harder.
Well, that's what I mean.
Right. Here's my argument against that, though. Whenever people say, like, why isn't it covering that? Like, you have to remember the fact that the majority of people, okay, they only watch the news in, like, these short half-hour to an hour-long increments. Like, you just can't go into every intricacy of every story. Like, it just doesn't happen. Like, if you want to know,
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
yeah, watch.
But
I will say this: watch your fucking local news. Just watch your local news, because it's gonna be the best reflection of some actual shit that's happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, the national media.
But see, that's the thing, is where I live, the city government is very corrupt and, like, under FBI investigation and whatnot, and so they don't really cover that much, because
Well, then all you have to do is just
well,
Google
no,
a
this is
different
what I'm saying.
town.
They pretty much only reflect national news. That's really all we hear, unless, like, Stan over there in that town on the east side of us got into a wreck this morning when he was trying to bang his cow in the middle of the road and
Yeah.
a truck hit him.
Well, then, you know what? Just get online and Google, a local news outlet in three. That's what you should do every morning when you want to know if something is a big deal or not. All right, you should check your local news, or do this when you get on Facebook or whatever, and you see, like, oh, a news story is happening. People are talking about it. Google your local news station, and then Google, like, a news station in California, and then Google a news station in Texas. And if they all three match up, then it's good. If they're different, then fucking just forget about it. It's not important. All right, well, people are marching all over, and now, and the other reason I bring that up, too, is because Oklahoma is about to have a teacher walkout in, what's today, the 25th? Yeah. So they have about a week left to figure that out, or they're all gonna just walk out of school.
Maybe if they would stop subsidizing oil and natural gas and actually spend that money on, places and people that actually matter.
And they're
Yeah.
just pumping all that wastewater in. Like, literally, the oil company is figuratively destroying Oklahoma because of the tax breaks, and literally destroying Oklahoma because the well water injection is causing just earthquake after earthquake. It's so fucking
It's so
dumb.
funny. Like I went to school. I know people who are talking about how like, oh well, the increase in earthquakes, which I definitely there is an increase in earthquakes because we went from having none when I was young to now Oklahoma has the what most they're more than California, more than all the other states.
Yeah.
I do remember being young, living in Oklahoma and having to do earthquake drills, but that was just because it was what if you're on a vacation in California or somewhere and an earthquake happens, you need to know what happened. Now they're actually having to do it because there are earthquakes that are going on that could possibly damage a building enough to where you need to know to get in the door frame or get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, I think that Oklahoma, I don't think they have the most number, but I think they have the highest per, like, a square mile or whatever it might be. And I know for sure they have the highest number of earthquakes that are 3.0 or higher. It's fucking insane. That's what's crazy. A
Well,
state that is pretty well known for their tornadoes, it now is like, hey, also the fucking ground just sometimes opens.
so the sky drops and then the ground opens up. So
Yes.
one of them will get you. I mean, I was in a I think it was 2011. I was in a hotel room in Tulsa, and my brother-in-law was in the restroom, and the rest of us were out in the room just BSing. And all of a sudden, you just start feeling the shaking. Like I'd never experienced anything like that before, and we all took off, and he's in there taking a dump, trying to screaming at us, asking us what's going on, and we're outside.
Well, speaking of disasters, Jordan, do you know what time it is?
No, what time is it?
Let's check the doomsday clock.
It is 2 minutes to midnight, according to the doomsday clock. Not much has changed. And I don't think it actually will for the rest of the year. I think they only update that once per year. But let's talk
It's
about...
yearly.
Yeah, I think it's a yearly clock. But let's check out some of the doomsday stories we've been hearing lately. All right, story number 1. Asia set to run out of fish by the year 2048. Says more than 550 scientists
Interesting.
have come up with an alarming health check on the planet. It says in Asia, exploitable fish
Speaking-
stocks could run out by 2048 because of the way the seas are being plundered. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I don't know. They can just farm, tilapia and salmon like we do and have all these trash fish that they're putting out there for people to eat and getting sick off of.
Yeah, I used to work in a restaurant for a long time. We sold tilapia as salmon, and no one fucking knew it. So I think we're fine. I don't think anybody
Well, I mean, they say
fucking cared.
they're packed with they're saying that the farm raised salmon and tilapia are some of the absolute worst, foods to eat because the way that they're raised and the environment that they live in, that they're actually not any better for you and they're actually worse.
I don't know. I mean, who gives a shit anymore? Just eat whatever the fuck you want. You're gonna die of something.
I mean, I imagine the people eating that would like to know and they give a shit.
Well, from the same website, we found out today, actually. They put out a report that said the world will run out of food and water. They didn't give a timeline. That's
Is this
all
an
they-
Alex Jones website?
No, this is express.co.uk. So, maybe it's a bit of an exaggeration to move the Daily Sun, who knows? But it says that Americans have witnessed a 50% decrease in renewable fresh water available per person since the 1960s. Well, we're fucking fine. I always think of that whenever I go to a car wash or a water park, and I think of Africa, and I'm just like, those idiots.
Which ones are the idiots?
Africa. Just come to the U.S., man.
Why?
We have tons of it.
Oh, yeah, because we're so forthcoming with inviting
Immigrants.
people
Yeah.
and allowing immigrants in our country.
Here's what
You
I
know,
don't understand though too. And maybe somebody, and I've heard this said before. I don't know where I heard this, but it does make a lot of sense. I don't understand why we can move oil, right? We move
yeah.
oil from like Alaska through all those pipelines to fucking across the US. Why can't we do it with water?
Well, there is this big body of water that surrounds the globe that they don't necessarily have to move.
Right. Okay, but
They're
here's
floating on it.
yeah, but well, yeah, but all that salt water.
Yeah, but you can take the salt out. You can desalinate it.
Well, then why is Africa not doing that?
Well, they probably don't have the money to invest in the technology and the
Well, what
infrastructure.
about California though? California's always in a fucking drought. Why are they not
And they're also all mildly retarded as well.
why don't they just run a pipeline from Alaska, melt some of that snow into a pipeline and ship it down the coast?
Just do an ice luge, but like not like a luge that you do like in the Olympics or
Right.
whatever, but like one that you do at a party, and just have a
No.
gigantic ice luge,
Set
and
up
they're
an
just
ice
pouring Jaeger down it,
set up an ice luge like they do at the Olympics and then let that fucking shit melt. It'll run down.
or just send blocks of ice down it,
Yeah, yeah,
and then
it'll
that ice will melt,
Yeah.
and they have water.
I don't understand it. I don't understand. Or Oklahoma's a good example. Another good example from Oklahoma. Oklahoma's all man-made lakes. What makes some fucking lakes? There's water everywhere. It's fucking nonsense.
Yeah. Well, once again, that's money. That's taxpayer money.
Well,
At least for us. I don't know about in Africa.
fucking get over it. Speaking of money and speaking of running out of food, earlier this week, Costco announced that they now sell a Doomsday Food Kit. It's
So I was actually looking into
well.
getting
Would you
Costco
like me to
membership.
give the details first?
Oh, I was just gonna say I was actually
It's
looking into getting a Costco
$6,000.
membership, and I saw this.
It's $6,000. It's $6,000.
It's awesome.
And it's 36,000 servings. It can feed a 4-person family for a year. How do you feel about this?
And well, I personally, I would never invest in something like that. A, because I don't have the money, and B, whenever it eventually does go bad and you're trying to, resupply, it's going to be another $6,000. Which, yeah, it's one of those things that you can, open it up and like eat on it, for amount of time so that it doesn't go to a complete waste. But I tend to go for doing shorter periods of time, but knowing that I need to at least have like a year's worth. But I'm thinking more about like, actual canned foods that you can yourself. And,
Yeah, this is all
dehydrate stuff.
canned.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about like canned in home, like in a pressure cooker, like not the tin cans that you buy at the store.
Right. This says that it has a 25-year shelf life, has 2,000 calories per person per day, includes grains, fruits, vegetables, proteins, and other basics. Now, here is one thing that I would like to somebody pointed this out on Twitter. In the product details on Costco's website, it says that it's packaged discreetly for privacy in shipping. And someone commented, "How the fuck do you ship 36,000 cans discreetly?"
Well, you really just hope that there's just not a gigantic box waiting on your porch.
Yeah, that's
Ship it in like smaller boxes over the course of 2 months.
that's a good idea. So here's where this is what we're gonna get into today. Jordan is about stocking up on stuff. Now, in my interests in prepping anything, I always like this stuff. I would much rather just go ahead and, if I had the 6K, throw down the 6K on that, throw down a couple grand on another prepackaged prepper kit on Amazon or something like that, So I have a question for you, Jordan.
Okay.
When the world goes bad and you are out of food, here's the question.
How you gonna get out of this one?
So how are you going to get out of this, Jordan?
Well, there is no food. So that means all available animals and plant life are dead.
Maybe not
You
dead.
die.
Maybe not dead, but you're not going to stumble upon, let's say, a ranch of cattle. You might find a deer in the woods, a wild hog running about. You might be able to get them that way, but
I feel like if it got to that point, then you would eventually have to start, making those ranches and capturing these animals and forcing them to breed and somewhat domesticate them in order to have a food supply.
well, that's what I'm saying. So let's say, how do you prepare for a situation like that where you don't have, and it does, maybe it's not even end of the world like that. Maybe it's a Hurricane Katrina type situation, right? Maybe that's a bad example. Maybe a better one is
I don't think that's a bad example because I mean there is ways to prepare for stuff like
yeah.
that.
So
You
what
just
I'm
have to
that's what I'm
you
saying.
have to
So
know if, go
the
ahead.
world's not over. You're just you're
Your world in that immediate moment is over.
your ability to go to the store and pick up food is not possible for about 2 to 3 weeks. How do you prepare for a situation like that? Whether it be an ice storm, tornado, hurricane, fucking lava. How are you gonna survive for 3 weeks in your house?
I mean, there are multiple ways to do it. Right off the bat, you can just spend a shit ton of money and just buy the pre-packaged stuff, which is never recommended because there's always going to be stuff in there that you don't want or need. A lot of experts recommend piecing it together. If you have the money, do it quickly. But if you don't, obviously, you're going to have to do it over a period of time. I mean, as we mentioned last time with the tornadoes, we know that you need to have um, basically a 72-hour kit or a 72-hour bag or whatever you need. But within that, you're going to need, and as we mentioned, at least a gallon of water per person per day. And they recommend for at least 3 days, but do it for however um, long that you are wanting to prepare for, whether it's 3 days, 2 weeks, or a year. You also need to have water for any type of sanitation and food prep. So if you're using dehydrated food, you need to make sure that you have enough water to go along with that, so you can prepare that. Same thing with food, at least a 3-day supply, 2 week supply, year supply, whatever you're wanting to prepare for. And it needs to be non-perishable, dehydrated, canned. And that's one thing that I'm actually like getting into now since we finally bought a house and we have an area that we can kind of designate for that. Is I'm wanting to start canning because I remember my mom, my grandma, my wife's mom still does it. And so that's kind of where we're wanting to go. And because we're probably going to bug in before we would bug out. I mean, as we saw with this last hurricane system that came through, it's a lot easier to stay than go because we're a little bit higher up in elevation and we don't have trees around us. So really the risk of like anything falling wouldn't be much. It would just be the flying debris, which, that's why you have storm shutters or plywood or whatever. But within that also, you want to at least have some sort of weather radio, preferably a battery powered that has a hand crank so you can recharge it that way. Flashlight. I always feel like you can never have enough flashlights, high lumen and low lumen, and colored light, because red lights are great for trying to read at night without anybody seeing that or at least seeing it very easily. First aid kits. That's another big thing that not many people really kind of stress is that you need to have the ability to take care of wounds for you and others. And so that's anything from, a branch crushing into your house and, a piece of wood or glass or metal severs like an artery, like, it sticks into your leg or something and nicks your femoral artery. You need to have tourniquets on hand. You need to have stuff like hemostatic agents. You don't necessarily need to go overboard with it, but you at least need to have a couple of ways. And I remember I was watching Doomsday Preppers a long time ago, and this is my first time to really hear the 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is none, I guess, ideology. And so I always try to have a
Which
minimum.
really quick, break that down again, just for people who might not know that 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is none. Explain that a bit more in detail.
It's the kind of like Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And so if you only have one of something, that one is either going to have to be used and you'll need another one, you can't find it, or it will go bad or break. And so you always want to have a backup, and you want to have a backup to your backup. It just depends on how deep you want to go. Think of it as like a football team. How many QBs do you want ready to come in? How many running backs? And so I always try to have a minimum of 3. Sometimes I go with 4, depending on what it is. So like in my uh, first aid kit that I carry in my car, I just have a couple of the SWAT T rubber tourniquets, the ones that you just kind of like wrap and stretch around. But in my go bag at home, and then I have a traveling first aid kit. I have multiple tourniquets. I have SWAT Ts. I have lots of hemostatic agent, as well as the little boo-boo stuff, the Neosporin Band-Aids and whatnot. And the other thing is, and one of the reasons why a lot of people advocate on not buying the big pack, the already made kits, is because you may be allergic to some of that stuff. Like I'm personally allergic to the Band-Aid brand adhesive, and so I can't use anything Band-Aid brand. So I have to buy Curad. So if I bought a big, first aid kit with a bunch of Band-Aids in it, it may be the wrong brand. And then I'm out that much money, unless you want to try to sell it on Facebook or, Craigslist or something, which you're probably not going to make your money back on.
And I think it's also worth pointing out, too, that when we give advice for when we say you need to have food for 72 hours, when we say you need to have a gallon of drinking water, that's per person. And I think that rule also applies when you're talking about, when you say that you need to have 3 tourniquets on hand. That's all advice for one person. So if
one
you're
person.
right, so if you're in a situation where maybe right off bat it'll at least be 3 or 4 or 5 people, whoever is in your immediate circle, that you would either bug in or bug out with.
It's kind of like eating healthy. It's not cheap.
Right, exactly. And you need to have the supplies for each person in your group. It's not enough to say, well, I got 3 tourniquets and I might not need, I'll probably never use them. I might only ever use one, so there's 4 of us and that'll be fine. Chances are, if you're going through the effort of doing it, the last thing that you want to happen to you is that shit hits the fan and then you're sitting there underprepared. You've spent time and money to prepare, but you're now underprepared. You might as well not be prepared.
Also, just having the correct materials, because a lot of people think, oh well, I know somebody who said that they made a tourniquet out of a belt and a stick or whatever. They may have made something that helped for whatever happened to them, but that's not a tourniquet, and that doesn't work the way a tourniquet does. You never want to rely on I heard a story about this, for something to work. And so you always want to make sure that you get an actual tourniquet or something that can very well be used as a tourniquet. Like the SWAT T isn't necessarily a tourniquet, but is made in a fashion that has instructions on it. So it tells you as you stretch it, like if it, how much it needs to be stretched in order to be a pressure bandage, a tourniquet, or whatever. And I know a lot of people buy stuff on eBay, and that's one of the worst places to buy tourniquets because there's so many knockoffs on there. And I don't want to trust my life to, something that was made in a sweatshop in China that may fail when I have to crank it down on, my thigh.
Right, and it's also another interesting thing to point out is don't just buy this stuff and then say, well, I have it, I'll be fine. Learn how to use that stuff.
Yes. Absolutely. That is like the biggest thing. I mean, you don't want to get a gun and carry it and have no idea how to use it or clean it or whatever. You want to know the ins and outs of it. And that includes your first aid supply, because you may have a suture kit in there and may need it in an emergency situation, but you may not know how to use it and you may end up hurting somebody.
Right. And there's so many easy ways now. I mean, I see consistently there are first aid classes, CPR classes, things like that you can go, and a lot of the times they're free because fucking they just want people to learn this stuff. But even if you're somebody who says I don't have the time, or if the class do cost money, there are so many resources online.
Well,
Whether
a lot
it's,
of businesses offer it for their employees
exactly. A good example of that is we have a defibrillator at work, and we were talking about how ridiculous that is because those are very precise.
Dangerous.
They're very precise instruments that if you use them incorrectly, you will kill someone.
Oh
And
yeah, I
we've
mean
done
there's
zero
cases
training.
of there's cases of EMTs being on the job for the first day, messing around with those and accidentally killing somebody just because they didn't know how to use it correctly.
Right.
I mean, they should know since they're EMTs, but obviously I mean, I guess it's kind of the equivalent of I didn't know that gun was loaded, but
Right. So, yeah, I mean, if you buy something that you have been told or you believe is helpful, again, that's what I keep going back to when I look at this stuff is like, if you've already taken the steps, you're already investing some of your time to listen to this, which means that you've probably spent some time or money preparing. Like, the very worst thing that you can do is end up in a situation where you're like, great, I have all this shit. I spent the time and money to prepare for this, but you don't know how to use the shit you bought.
and then you realize that you're living in Alaska and you accidentally bought a summer sleeping bag instead of a below zero one.
Yeah. Or you bought the wrong kind of splints, or you end up with somebody who is allergic to ibuprofen and all you've got is ibuprofen, and now this guy's fucking shit out of luck. So pay attention.
And that's another reason why I was talking about like don't buy the big bulk kits. Now there are always exceptions to rules, and we are by no means sponsored by anyone at this point. But
Actually,
just
that's wrong. Sorry, I forgot we are sponsored by this. Do you care if I read the quick sponsor?
Go for it.
All right, this episode is sponsored by Stamp.com. Sick of websites trying to sell you lots of stamps when all you need is one? Check out Stamp.com. The perfect way to buy stamps in quantities of one or less. Sign up with Stamp.com and receive your first stamp free. Just use promo code Mark Maron. All right, Jordan, you can go ahead and...
Okay, is that you trying to do a pitch to stamps.com? Or
no, that's for Stamp.com. This is a real promotion.
Everything you just heard is not true. That is being made up off the top of his head.
Stamp.com, like Stamps.com, but less. That's their tagline.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is there's always an exception to a rule, and one of those exceptions are companies who actually do make the stuff and know what they're doing. And the one off the top of my head is Medical Gear Outfitters, which is shop.skinnymedic.com. That's SKINNYMEDIC.com. I'm sure a lot of people listening, if there's even a lot of people listening, if they have any experience with YouTube and looking up anything medical prep, they're going to know who Skinny Medic is. And he has a company called Medical Gear Outfitters. Sorry, I'm stammering. I'm trying to get over the Tourette's and stutter that I never actually had. But they offer kits. They offer individual items. They even offer bulk medical supplies, tourniquets, tourniquet holsters, and whatnot. They work with you if you have an FSA account, and at the end of the year you need to spend the rest of it on there. You can talk to them, tell them, hey, I've got this much money left. This is what I'm wanting, and they can piece together something, or at least give you insight into what you can get. But this last year, I just spent the rest of my FSA with them because, it is all medical gear, and I got some really good first aid kits. And so I've got a couple that they'll go in my wife's car and my car, and they are mostly bleed out stuff, but they do have some of the, allergy medicine that we've added, but there's painkillers and whatnot, Tylenol or acetaminophen. And then we also got some Molly pouches that are going on go bags, but really good experience.
Yeah, and
I
let me draw a comparison here too, just for people who maybe are new to prepping. Um, if you were to play, let's say you play video games, okay, and you want to buy yourself, you want to get a full setup of video game things, okay? You let's say you got a new computer or you want to get a new gaming system or whatever it might be. You wouldn't go to Walmart and buy their like video game bundle. You know what I mean? You would have
Yeah.
enough awareness that maybe I should go to the company that manufactures this stuff and get a bundle through them, not a bundle of bullshit that Walmart just threw together because they know they can just sell this kit to people. So I think the same thing goes, because again, I didn't know a lot about prepping when I first started, and I think one of the things that makes us both interesting for this is Jordan is a much more of a do-it-yourself kind of guy, and I'm much more the kind of I just like to pay somebody to do it for me. But that
is very true.
And there's going to be a lot of listeners who are on both sides of that spectrum, and maybe some crossover there. So if you are the sort of person like me who says, I don't want to waste the time doing all of this by myself, I don't 100% know what I'm doing, I would just like somebody to do it for me, Amazon is maybe not the best place to try to buy a prepper bundle.
I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah, maybe not like a bundle. And there are some companies that may offer something on there, but I will say Amazon is really good for piecing stuff together.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying is that there are situations, there are some supplies that I have found, these are good bundles of good materials. This all serves a purpose. It's not just filler to make it look like you're getting a lot for whatever the price is.
Yeah.
Just research the companies behind them. There are a lot of doomsday prepper bundles that are like it's just nonsense. It's the same thing if you buy like you might buy a game, or not a game,
Or the movie pack. It's 50 black and white movies, and there's only
Right.
one on there that you actually want to see.
Right, yeah, or sometimes you'll buy like a children's toy and it's like batteries included, but they're like $2 batteries that are just garbage. It's the same thing. So you'll see a lot of that stuff. You'll see a lot of like a good one that I saw. It was a very nice like sleeping bag and tent for prepping. It was like it was a solid. I knew the brand was good. But what they did was they just partnered with some bullshit
Yeah.
to make it seem like you're getting a lot more. And so what you ended up getting was a good tent and a good sleeping bag, but the accessories with it were just bullshit. So in those situations, it's like if you're in a situation where you're gonna say, look, I'm gonna buy this shit anyways, and I
Yeah,
can
but do
get
your research, because you may be able to find those for cheaper.
right. And the thing is, it's just like with anything else in life. If you think like Armor All will do that, you'll find like an Armor All thing, two things taped together, and it'll be like a nice set of Armor All, and then this like piece of shit air conditioner or air freshener thing, and it's like, whoa, so much savings, but it's not, because some of it's just garbage. So
Because half of the scent is out of that air freshener already.
yeah, the scent is Armor All. It's just cardboard.
Not trying to get too far off what we were talking about when we were talking about, like, learning and getting to know this stuff. And that was one of the reasons why I mentioned Medical Gear Outfitters, is they offer classes. You have to be located either on the East Coast, close to South Carolina, or willing to fly in or drive there. But like on their website right now, they have it looks like 3 different classes coming up. June, and yeah, so it's May, March, May, and June of 2018, and they're $125 per class. They list where it's at, what they're doing. Like this, the one in particular I'm looking at is, you bring your current trauma kit and they will review it. They will let you know if there's stuff in there that you don't want, you don't need, or what you actually need in there. And then they also have supplies on hand if you want to purchase them. So if you find out that the tourniquet you're carrying is a piece of shit knockoff, you can, go buy a cat, or a soft tea or something.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, what we'll do is we'll go ahead, because I have an Amazon wish list for some of the things that are a bit more expensive. So Jordan and I will kind of collaborate on that, and we'll put a link up to that on the website. And that way, if you guys want to check that out, if you want a little bit of tip. And this is all stuff that, again, it's a bit of a hodgepodge of how we do stuff. So some of it will be bundles. I'm much more of the persuasion that I would just prefer to buy 4 separate first aid kits that are different and complement each other, and maybe you have some overlap there on some of the things.
Yeah.
And then so for me, for my personal preference of how I would, and again, I'm not as concerned with bugging out. I'm more concerned with bugging in. And so some of the kits might have, different medicines in them, or different types of bandages or splints or whatever. And when I look at it, for me, I look at it and think that's enough. I overlap on the things that I know for sure will want multiple sets of.
Yeah.
And then there are some other things that are ancillary that I don't think I'd ever really need them, but it's not going to hurt me to have them and just have a little bit of it.
And that's what I've kind of done. Like after I ordered from Skinny Medic, was I ended up having like a bunch of different types of first aid kits, but they all kind of had this little bit of an overlap, but it was stuff that, kind of just catered to different areas. And so, if there's stuff in there that I didn't want, I just pulled it out and put it in a general, first aid kit for the house.
Right. And also too, I also have a couple other things in there too that a lot of people maybe might not think of, because here's the other
Sex dolls and dildos.
Yes, here's the other thing that I'm super concerned with in that situation. Your whatever stockpile that you amass, unless you're just a billionaire, who is putting tons of money into, your supplies, eventually you're going to start to run out of stuff. And so I have put in some of what I consider to be like luxury items that I maybe might not personally ever use, but I see high trade value in them.
Like what?
So a couple of things. One is seeds.
Oh, yeah.
So I bought, in my little kit, I have 3 different bags of seeds. And they're massive, and they come with like 20,000 different seeds in them.
Just always got to make sure that you store those in the proper conditions.
Yes. And so will I ever grow those seeds? Probably not. I don't know much about farming. I do, in my small circle of the way that this scenario plays out in my mind, I do know people who know how to farm and could possibly grow that stuff. But if not,
learn it.
And I think I could grow. I think I could figure that out.
And then you'll find out that you don't have a green thumb, and you end up killing all of the tomatoes and all the cucumbers that were going to save your life.
Exactly. So instead, though, the way that I have that set up is I have 3 different bags with different types of seeds in them. There's a lot of crossover on sort of the staple crops that you would want, but then there's some that only come in one, like radishes and blah, blah, blah. So the reason why I've stocked up so much on them is because that's an invaluable resource to trade to people, and it's one that most people aren't going to think of, especially if like, let's say we get into a scenario where they say, hey, we've got 2 weeks before this awful things happen. No one's going to run out and buy seeds, so I have those just already here. Another one that I consider to be luxury items, condoms and tampons. Because we definitely keep tampons, pads, and stuff like that, because you never know when you'll run into somebody who will need that. Exactly. There's always a scenario that you could just use a shirt or just any kind of cloth that's laying around. But like if you get into the right scenario,
those aren't going to make good condoms.
I'm talking about more for tampons than condoms.
Oh, okay.
But if you get into a scenario where maybe you are looking at another outside group and there's the potential to merge, or maybe they have some shit that you want that you ran out of, those are things that, like, those sort of comforts that people have grown accustomed to. Like, this is how I picture it. If I'm running into a situation where maybe I meet a guy who's got like his successful camp, and they've established crops
This
and
is why
things
you
like
need
that.
the condoms.
No, yes, this is why I need the condoms for when I fuck
Okay.
him and steal his crops. Let's say this guy has a little group, and they're growing crops, and they've got cows, and they've figured it out a little bit, but he's got a wife, and that wife would love nothing more than to go back to using tampons for a while. Like, that's fucking, I'm telling you, that guy will do almost anything to get those tampons. Like, when
Or
that,
she will.
that's what I mean, and he will do that for her.
Yeah.
So that's like a crazy good. I'm very much set up for like that trading, because I think even when it comes to like this idea of like stockpile gold, I think that falls really fucking flat initially. I think that gold is something that you're talking maybe 6 months into the end of the world scenario, that gold becomes a valuable trading resource again. At first, though, dude, it's all going to be about things that people used to have that they don't have anymore.
It's just like the stock market. You never know what it's going to do. You never know what's going to be selling, what's going to be, being purchased or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how stocks work.
Yeah, it's just you never know what the supply and demand is going to be.
That's what I meant.
That's what you meant. And I think that there's always going to be a demand for tampons and condoms. I think the supply will run out.
And
So,
alcohol. There's
yeah.
a lot of people that advocate buying alcohol. I actually, in the last couple of years, have started making mead and wine. And I want to do beer, but for some reason, I just do mead and wine because they're probably easier.
Yeah, and that's why I think that I'm not too worried. Well, I don't drink, so I don't care. But I mean, people can make alcohol, man. It's hard to make a tampon. It's hard to make a nice little tampon with a plastic applicator.
You start growing cotton.
Yeah, but how are you going to make a plastic applicator when the world ends?
You just reuse them, just sanitize them.
Mm-mm. They don't want to do that. I am not sticking that back in my vagina. I've already done that, and then they have to share. I
Yeah.
am not using the tampon applicator that Karen used. I am just not going to do that.
Oh my God. That's why you use a
You
pad.
fucking give him 2 cows for that box of maxi pads. Do
This
it
isn't
now.
worth 2 cows.
Listen, the world is over. Do you ever want to fuck me again? Then
Because
get
he
those
had
tampons.
condoms too. And we need those because I'm not getting pregnant.
This is like, the apocalypse is not a great time to have a baby.
And we just want to point out that we are not sexist. We are not trying to generalize women and make it sound like that's how they all are, because I'm pretty sure my wife would kill me if she thought that.
But we all know when the world ends, they'll be the cause of it. All right, Jordan, it is time for
Listener email.
listener email.
Oh man, we got a lot.
So many. All right, let's look at the emails this week. This one is from WordPress, writing in again. Hi, Prepper Boys. If you want to make 2018 the year you finally turn your website into a powerful marketing tool for your business,
Absolutely.
then we have some great news for you. Not interested.
Is this the same lady from last time? Like, is she really wanting our jock that bad?
Well, this is a man this time. I don't know if
Oh.
it's I don't know if it was. Let me see who the person who emailed us last time was. Oh,
like
nope.
Gina.
Last time it was Ann. This time it's
Ann.
Don.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
WordPress.
D-O-N or D-A-W-N?
D-O-N. Don L.
Okay.
Well,
Cool.
WordPress, we're not going to use you because we didn't like you. I am actually now going to check all the WordPress.
No offense to Ann or Don.
No,
Y'all, it
yeah.
was not your fault.
We know it's not you guys. I just moved WordPress to the spam folder, so hopefully they don't write in again. Next
Okay.
email is from Hulu.
Oh, are they wanting to pick us up, like, and kind of make a show so we have cameras on us?
No, what they're offering me is a free trial of Hulu. I tried to sign up for Hulu using this email because I used the free trial on my other email.
I can just give you the login for mine.
All right, that'll be helpful. And our third email is from Stamp.com. Jordan, do you know what the best way to buy just one stamp online is?
No, tell me.
It's Stamp.com. Tired of paying tons of money for multiple stamps? With Stamp.com, you can buy just one stamp at a time. Just go to Stamp.com and use promo code Joe Rogan.
So the sponsorship that we quote, I'm doing air quotes right now, that we had was actually you just going ahead and reading the listener emails early.
No, this is a real Stamp.com sponsorship. Stamp.com has sent us...
Don't listen to this at all.
This
is not true.
Stamp.com, a special offer for everybody who signs up with Stamp.com today. You get one free stamp. I
fear the day that this ever becomes sponsored by Stamp.com, because I know there's not going to be very much negotiating. It's just you going, I want a shitload of stamps.
Well, Stamp.com isn't a website.
Oh, is it not?
Stamp.com, no. You're thinking of
Is it
Stamps.
Stamps?
You're thinking of Stamps.com.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Stamps.
Stamp.com is different than Stamps.com.
The day that Stamps.com decides that they want to, let's sponsor these guys. They seem legitimate. What?
We won't take it. We're already working with Stamp.com. Keep your multiple stamps to yourself. Shop with Stamp.com.
We'll take one stamp at a time.
Yes, that's their slogan, one stamp at a time. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can contact us at prepperboys@gmail.com or on Twitter at prepperboys.
You can contact Ryan at 479.
Nobody's contacted us yet because we haven't put the first episode up yet, but we will, and then we'll answer your questions. We just want to make sure.
Wait a minute. So how do we have listener emails?
Because these are all just the emails from the websites we signed up with already.
How do they know?
They, I don't know.
They're listening to us.
The NSA is tracking us. We know too much.
Hold on just a second. I'm going to turn my mic up and do some ASMR.
Okay.
What are you doing, Ryan?
I'm playing with one stamp.
I can't really hear you because I can't hear your mic. That's
right. I'm sorry.
Your Skype.
I'm playing with one stamp. All right, Jordan. It's time of the show that we...
Let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap this up. All right. So what other stuff should we maybe add to our first aid kits? Our quick emergency bug in kits.
Well, Ready.gov, who we have been talking about, their basic disaster supply kit. They recommend extra batteries for everything, signal whistle, dust mask or some sort of respirator to help filter contaminated air, plastic sheeting, duct tape, all that stuff. Moist towelettes, garbage bags, plastic ties for sanitation. Of course, some sort of tool, wrench or pliers to turn off utilities, water, gas, etc. Manual can food openers if you're using a lot of cans in your prep foods. Also, try to have dehydrated food, and if you are into it personally, canning your food. Maps of your local areas, and this is one thing that I remember discussing with a friend a long time ago, is it was, with the advent of GPS and everybody kind of using it, and there's not really too many people out there who didn't, if they didn't know beforehand, they don't know how to read an actual map. And so get maps of the areas that you're in, maybe even go like a tri-state or, a quad state area, and just make sure that you know how to get to places without GPS. And then, of course, cell phone chargers and backup batteries and whatnot.
Yeah, and again on the same timeline as maps, if your plan involves you driving somewhere, fucking think of that shit beforehand. Like a really good example of that is where you used to live and where I live now. We had a plan to meet up in such an event.
Are you talking about when we lived in the same town, or?
Well, I was talking about to where your parents live.
Oh, okay.
There are multiple ways to get there. And the normal route is probably not the way you want to go. You probably don't want to get on the interstate if that's if it's like your life and your life's plan of surviving is to go a certain to a certain place, think of multiple ways to get there. Don't just, rely on like, well, I always just take the interstate. Like, figure
Yeah.
the fuck out and do
Back
that.
roads.
Yeah, and do that stuff beforehand, because the last thing you want to have to do if shit's popping off is like be debating with people about like what's the best way to go. Like, figure it out beforehand.
I don't know, Susan. I don't know how to read a map because I was never in the Boy Scouts.
Because
and I'm also a millennial.
And because I spent all my time eating shit and sucking dicks.
One thing that we didn't really get to hit on was also additional additional emergency supplies. We can definitely cover that at another time, but that starts getting into the stuff that can be considered a luxury versus a need. Because like fire extinguisher, is that a luxury or a need? Some may think it's one, some may think it's another.
Right. So next time you hear from us, that's what we'll talk about. We'll talk about a little bit more of what you should have in your kit, and we'll also talk about how to devise plans to, what does your 24 hours look like after it happens? What does 48 hours after it happens look like? What does a week after it happens look like?
Who do you need to contact? How do you get from point A to point B?
Exactly,
yes.
exactly. So that's it for this show, guys. Thanks for listening. Remember,
I had fun.
Yeah, remember to subscribe. Do you subscribe to a podcast? Is that how it works?
I don't know.
I don't know
I'm
either.
just talking to a mic.
Subscribe, like it, leave us a review, I guess. Do they
do whatever is appropriate?
Yeah, favorite it. Retweet us.
Don't comment bad things.
Don't comment mean things. We are strong in spirit, but weak in confidence. So uplift us. And
that
maybe
is so true.
And maybe we'll all be able to make it to the end of the world together as friends. This has been episode 2 of the Prepper Boy podcast. Jordan, anything to add?
Fuck you.
Prepper boys, do spade. We gotta survive. Yeah, we gotta survive. To stay alive. Yeah, to stay alive. You better be ready, or you better be steady. No, you don't be pathetic. We can happen. Prepper boys, you just gotta watch it all. Prepper boys, when your back's against the wall. Prepper boys, when there's no one left to call. Prepper boys, it can happen any minute.